And here we go. Early in the morning for another stream. A little bit more practice on some concept for ICRPGs. Specifically, we're talking chunks today, which is awesome. And so we're just looking at a few seconds or a few minutes to see if anybody comes in before we dive right in to another practice time, developing out and working through chunks for vehicles and other things. This time I did not design this sheet. This is actually something provided through Runehammer. This is just kind of their vehicle sheet. This is a bit of a hack though of the mech sheet, which I'll get to in a little bit, because the power suit, mech suit is always one of the best examples of how chunks work in ICRPG. Plus, they're just super cool, and everybody, who's going to be bad about getting into a power suit? So, but we're not going to start with them today. We're going to start with a wagon, because I feel it's a good example. But before that, we'll go over exactly how chunks work in just a second, as I finally get settled in. Technology continues to... I could be on my guard for technology issues, but things are going pretty good. So, I'm just checking everything one last time before we get going, just to make sure any unexpected stuff gets taken care of. Okay. Taking a sip of the old Gatorade in the morning. Let's see. Oh no, not the skull. That's not going to be good. Okay. Alright, well, let's get started, just so we can dive on in. And I've got a bunch of practice opportunities for chunks, because they can really, just like monsters, there's so many endless ways that you can use them in the game that they're worth exploring in a lot of different variations, because they're not just limited to power suits or spaceships or things like that. So you can start using chunks everywhere once you understand how they work. And I think that's a great place to start, is how do chunks work? So chunks are discussed in Master Edition. They're also discussed in Core, Second Edition as well. There's a really good mainframe podcast on them on the Runehammer Patreon, as well as a thinking sheet, just a little one-page kind of write-up that Hankerin did. And so those are great tools, and I highly recommend that if you haven't checked out the mainframe podcast, then to do so, just because there's so much good information in there and so much good advice for patrons. So definitely check that one out. Just because I listened to it this week, and I was just, again, I learned a lot, and I've listened to it multiple times as we talk about each subject, reviewing some of the things that Hank shares on the podcast. Really, really just kills it, and literally makes a lot of sense. So, anyways, in the GM's guide, we talk about vehicles and chunks, and what's really fun about chunks is it's a way of constructing these vehicles, or these larger than a player kind of object or mechanical device. So they can go all the way up to starships, can be defined by chunk. It can all the way go down to a wagon. So your scale ability here is just endless, and it's the same system regardless if it's a starship or a wagon. And so essentially what it means a chunk is 1 heart of vehicle HP. So players have 1 heart of just normal health points. Well, vehicles also get chunks, which are 1 heart of vehicle HP. In the case of battle suits, a lot of the times it's just 5 HP. So you have that 10 and the 5. Each chunk is made up of 1 key function or weapon. It's about 250 pounds of metal, rubber, whatever, so you can kind of see how things are going, and it costs a a good chunk of change. Um, it recommends, and I think it's a good piece of advice when it comes to chunks, is that no vehicle can exceed 5 chunks. Obviously, you can easily bypass that rule. It's a guideline. It's a piece of advice. What I find with the ruling, let me zoom in a little bit here so that you can actually like see what I'm pointing at. So no vehicle can exceed 5 chunks. What's really nice about keeping to that rule and just holding yourself to that is that you focus on the key factors of what makes up a vehicle. Like you have the starship here, you could include 10 different chunks, but then each chunk has 1 heart, which makes it 10 chunks times 10 hit points for each heart. It's 100 hit points. Like just like monsters, it's not about adding more hit points, it's about adding focus and clarity to your vehicles, to your monsters, so you can really focus in on the most impactful or the most useful pieces, rather than trying to simulate every nitty-gritty component or chunk of the vehicle. The other parts about the vehicles and chunks are that specifically vehicles, they deal double damage to those on foot. So if you have a starship shooting at some soldiers just down on the ground, they deal double damage. So if you're rolling weapons, it's like, okay, to roll a d6, okay, he's dealing 8 damage instead of 4. Roll a 2, it's 4. Pedestrians, on the other hand, do half damage against vehicles. So if a pedestrian or a soldier is just shooting up from the ground at this vehicle, he rolls a d6 for his weapon. Well, he rolled a 5, but you're going to reduce that by half, and I'd give it the round up for the player. So he's going to do 3 damage to this vehicle. So it adds a little bit of beefiness, so the players or the individual people on the ground aren't dealing the same scale of damage to vehicles. Then, anyways, after that, each chunk, once it's reduced to 0, it's essentially destroyed, and you remove the ability that's associated with that chunk. So remember, each chunk is 1 key function. Well, if you destroy this jet's kind of minigun, well, it's reduced its heart total by 1, and that gun is no longer available. So fighting these kind of things really focuses on like, okay, what is the key mechanic that players want to get rid of, and they focus their attention on that. A lot of the times you can either roll randomly to what chunk gets hit anytime you attack it, or if the attacker is aiming specifically at it, you can kind of make that a hard roll, and then they can target a specific thing. So it's like, oh, that minigun is really just crushing us. I want to focus my attack on that. Okay, it's going to be a hard roll. So then the other thing is a lot of stuff that you can do with that is, okay, what happens when the chunk is destroyed? Does it explode? Does it fly off? Does it do things? And so it has all these different elements of play that you can introduce to your game without adding a ton of complexity. And it falls a lot in line with the general philosophy of ICRPG, which is keep it simple, focus on the essentials, and really just kind of highlight the main key pieces rather than getting lost in the nitty-gritty. If I want to attack this wagon or I want to use this wagon, I only want to focus on the most important bits, leave out all the kind of the boring stuff or the stuff that might bog us down out of the way. So let's dive in and start practicing building out chunks for a couple things. Starting with a wagon. These, like I said, the scalability of chunks is really endless, and so to prove it, we're going to start with a wagon, and we're going to go from there. Hey, morning guys. Thanks for dropping in. I'm excited for chunks. I think they're a great tool, and I think they're a great way to include more complexity into this. You definitely could Bonbon, like doing it like that could definitely be more useful. The reason why it is not in not in landscape mode, is because it's just a real quick modification of the power suit one. I didn't have time to really put it all together. It's this one. So you can see there's a reason why it's portrait rather than landscape. I'm sure one day I can probably put together a chunk sheet or something, but that's why. But it's a good comment. I completely agree with you. Having a space for an index card right there, that would be pristine. Anyways, so let's just start off with our wagon. Okay, and so thinking about a wagon, we got to think about the most important chunks. Now, I don't think this wagon necessarily needs 5 chunks, 50 hit points. And as a player, like having this thing here it's like I feel like I'm gonna be carting this along, and it's more about defending this wagon rather than, say, attacking a wagon. So I don't really think there's really much need to attack a wagon. You usually attack the things on the wagon, or you take the things on the wagon, or you protect the things on the wagon rather than attacking it directly. And so I think personally, at most, this thing has like 3. It's a wagon plus 1. Sorry, I get distracted by the comments. So I will get to the comments once in between the sheets. Sorry, guys. I want to get I don't want to get distracted. I'm easily distracted, especially in the morning. But okay, so let's focus in on the key essentials. So when I'm thinking about the wagon, okay, I have these, the harnesses for, the horses or the oxen or whatever. So I could do that. I could also do the wheels. I could also do the actual cart itself. I could do the light, things like that. I could do the brakes if I wanted to. All those could be potential chunks, but I don't really want to do all of them. What are the most essential things? The light is not essential. It can be narrative, it can be included as a small detail, but not as a full chunk. The brakes, again, not as it's narrative. Maybe I could include it as a treat for an activation, like maybe you could activate the brakes, or maybe if someone wanted to interact with it, they could just snap it off in one action. Like I don't feel like that's a full action. And then the harnesses, if this is being carted by horses, okay, maybe that's a chunk. Especially like maybe if there was a horse there, I could include the horses as part of the chunk. So not that I recommend like release the horses. So you could break that, wheels or there. But in reality, I think the most important pieces are the wheels and the wagon itself. Okay, so chunk number 1 is going to be the wheels, and chunk number 2 is the cart or the whatever. So between the wagon, the wheels, and the cart is going to go there. So I can essentially give each chunk 10 hit points. So now this is a 20 hit point 2 heart wagon, and now each one has to have a special function or a weapon or some kind. I can tell you right now, this wagon does not have weapons. Like I didn't modify this sucker with an RPG or a flamethrower or anything like that. It's just a wagon. So the cart special function is, okay, it has 20 slots of inventory. That's its special function. If you destroy this cart chunk, you lose those 20 slots of inventory. Then the question that I would then ask yourself is, if this is destroyed, what happens to these, to the whatever is in the inventory? Is it lost, or broken? Does it just fall out? Things like that. It could go either way. I mean, technically you lose that functionality, which is the slots, but what's inside the inventory? That's where that extra level of flexibility and dynamics come in with the chunks. You kind of get to decide what happens when they break, and that can be a lot of fun to introduce some moments of some little mechanics for the game. And then the wheels. So the wheels essentially get to move far per round. So these wheels allow the cart to move up to far each round. Obviously, we're not really focusing on the horses for right now. We're just going to leave it at 2. But if we were, we could do that. Or if someone's pulling it, we could say that moves far, things like that. But if you take out the wheels, move is gone. Like, you take out the wheels, it's gone. And so maybe in your narrative you describe it as all the wheels fall off, or maybe you just describe it as one wheel falls off. That's not the point of chunks. That's up to you as a GM to how you introduce what happens when it breaks. But once you break the wheels, it can no longer move far. Maybe it can't even move at all. But boom, that's a chunk out wagon with 2 hearts of chunks. And so if players come up and hack at it with their sword, then as they slash at it with their sword or whatever, because this is a vehicle, you could make the case that that sword isn't going to do 4 points of damage to the wheels. It's going to do 2 points of damage to the wheels because this is a vehicle and you can half that. And for me, it makes sense. Oh, I'm going to hit the wagon wheels with my sword. 2 damage instead of 4 makes sense to me. So again, totally up to you though, how you feel about it. So that's our wagon. Now let's get into the one that I feel like we are all kind of most familiar with when it comes to chunks, which is that power suit. When we start talking about chunks, a lot of the time the concept of the power suit comes up. And so, Jonathan, you're welcome. Thank you for the shout out. And so, just catching up on the comments, like I said, but focused. Power suits. So, power suits are like mechanical body armor. Thinking Iron Man, thinking Gundam, things like that. You can scale them from a power suit, which is like I said, Iron Man level, where it's literally about the same size as a human, or you can go all the way up to a mech, and at that point it becomes more like that Gundam level. And so that's where you can kind of differentiate between what I said earlier about, hey, a power suit has 5 hit points per chunk versus a mech maybe have 10. And so we're going to focus mostly on the power suit. And in the core edition, there's the last fight on Krell, I believe is the adventure. There's a mission, an adventure that includes these power suits that you can use as kind of inspiration for how they work, as well as in the adventure handout on Patreon. You can find that adventure there too. But anyways, so power suits have a call sign and a specialty. So again, another way that you can differentiate them with power suits. So call sign would be like Hunter, and his specialty is like firearms, or he's the weapons guy. You have your team. And it's like, here's the gun guy, here's the tank, here's the speedy agile guy. But anyways, that's beyond the point. That's just a way of flavoring that out to get that included. And so now we can think about what kind of chunks do we want to have for this power suit. And like I said, the objective is no more than 5. I'm personally thinking, maybe 4, but we can go with 5. And so because these each are going to have 5 hit points, then it'll have essentially 25 health overall. Now, let's start thinking essential stuff. Well, we can have some kind of, gun. We can have some kind of maybe like armor. We could do, excuse me. We have a core engine or whatever. We have some kind of like, jump jet or something like that. You have maybe a sword. Maybe you have another gun, things like that. So you have potential options. But one thing to consider is there is a core functionality in a power suit, which is to house a human, right? So you've got to have at least, or at least, again, you don't have to, but as a core functionality, we can do chunk, we can do the pilot seat. So that's a core functionality, and so it has 5 hit points, and it holds pilot. If they die, then or if this chunk explodes, if pilot is still inside, they immediately roll dying. Okay? So things like that. So now we got four things left to play with. So we got a pilot seat, which is a core essential piece in my book, and so now we've got some things to play with. And you guys have already given some suggestions I've seen. So we got micro missile launcher. Let's do that in the shoulder. So we'll do this as micro missile launcher. And I love that you guys are already calling this stuff out, because that's exactly what you do when you're playing around with chunks. Is you go, what would be cool? Oh, a micro missile launcher in the shoulder. Duh. Let's just put it there. And so we can do micro missile launcher in there. It's 5 hit, 5 HP. And for specs, let's do D8 missiles that all deal weapon. Okay, so on your turn, when you fire your missile launcher, micro missile launcher, 5 missiles are going to go out. They're going to go hit up to far, we'll write far here, and he's going to deal 5 missiles worth of weapon damage, and so boom, 6. If I was attacking another mech, I would deal, if I was all 5 of them were attacking the same one, 30 damage. Or if I was attacking like a strew of Zavosian soldiers or enemies or all sorts of aliens or whatever that I'm fighting against, then I would deal 6, 5 times 12 damage for each missile, because it's intense. And then turn to reload, because that's pretty intense. Again, you can limit them, you can play with them, you can leave it open or anything like that. So chest radiator, knuckle guns, rocket heel. Let's go with kind of a chest. Well, we have a gun there, so I guess he's firearms, so he probably doesn't have a lot of weapons. So let's do chest beam. Okay, and then energy beam up to far, all in straight line, take energy, which is a D10. You just blast them. Yeah, good question. So good question on both. So let's start with the first one. Can chunks interrelate? If you had a tracking computer and a radar array in the shoulder, could could the micro missiles be seekers around the corner as long as both chunks were active? Absolutely. That's a super awesome idea. So now you can just include those kind of details in your chunk description and play it out with, okay, if you have both, you can actually have this ability, and you can have this, that. But once one's gone, then that extra functionality is there. I think that's a super cool idea. So definitely they can interrelate. Then Christopher addressed vehicle damage versus normal damage. Good question. So you got this considered a vehicle, and you've got these guys right here, which are considered essentially pedestrians, little soldiers, whoever. And so what it does, the damage is that if my Reptoid gunner is shooting somebody in a power suit, then any damage that this Reptoid does to the power suit, it's halved. So he's going to pull out his gun. He's going to roll weapon. He's going to roll gun. Sorry, which is D8. He rolls 3. Let's say plus 1, so it's 4. Instead of dealing 4 damage directly to this power suit, the damage is half. So now this gunner only deals 2 damage to this power suit. Now, when it comes to where he's damaged, if I'm attacking this whatever, it's really kind of random. So I would roll for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, and I'd roll a 5, and then it would just kind of assign it there. Or he can make it a hard shot and aim specifically at one piece. So like, I want to get rid of the gun micro missile. I want to get rid of that. I make it a hard shot, and then any damage is specifically dealt to that. Now, on the flip side, if this power suit targets this Reptoid gunner with his chest beam, okay, he's standing there, he goes full Iron Man and just blasts them with an energy beam, okay, well, he hits and deals 4 energy damage. Well, because the scale is different, because we're dealing with a vehicle here and a pedestrian or a soldier down here on the ground, this is actually doubled. So now he didn't just take 4 damage, he took 8 damage. So that's kind of how damage works. The last thing that I'll say is if a player is in a power suit and I have, say, Rax, another power suit coming in, and he damages something and gets hit with the power suit that the player has, a lot of the times I will let the players allot the damage however they want rather than assigning it randomly. And so that way the players can kind of focus in. Do I want to drop all of the damage into one chunk and then it's destroyed? Or do I want to spread it out amongst all of them so I still have all my functionality, but now all of them are slightly damaged? The other thing that I'll say about damage is, so this has 5, this gun, this micro missile has 5 HP. If Rax comes up and deals, let's say 7 damage towards this gun, what you can do, and again, this is up to you as a GM and working with your players, you can say, once you've dumped it into one, if you dump it into one rather than spread it out, if you dump it into one, once you've destroyed that missile launcher, then all the other damage is kind of dissipated and it doesn't affect the other one. So it's kind of a give and take. You can spread out across all chunks, but you have to take all 7 damage. Or if this gun has 1 hit point taken, and then you can dump all 4 into this gun and destroy it and dissipate the extra 3, but you just lose the chunk straight up. Again, this is not mention, not that I've seen. If I am, I'm forgetting, but that's just again a different way of handling it, and so it leaves some room for as GMs to kind of decide what's happening and how you want to play the game. All right, so we've got chest beam, we got gun, we got pilot seat. Let's just do 2 more real quick. And so I like the idea of a sword, even though he's a firearms guy. So we'll just do energy blade. And so that's 5. Essentially what it's going to do is just energy damage up to, close. You got to get in close to deal energy damage. And then finally, what was the other suggestion that I saw? Which was a shield. Now, here's the thing. I think a shield would be great, but we are keeping with the firearm. I think a sword is already pushing it for somebody, so it's sort of like his bayonet or his Rambo knife or whatever. But the shield might go against the gunner idea a little bit, and definitely they do. And so I'm gonna go with maybe what was one of the suggestions? Knuckle gun. I like that idea. That was the one I was looking for. Knuckle gun, 5 hit points. What it is it's gonna do. It's just gonna do weapon, but if you're up close, triple damage. He gets in there, punches in with his knuckle gun, blast him for triple damage. And so now we've got 5 chunks. We missed out on opportunities to do mobility stuff, shield stuff. And so now you can kind of go through and play it out that way. And then you can have variety. Players can either make their own and decide the chunks there, or you can have, like in Krell, you have a selection of power suits that have different themes: the tank, the firearms, the melee, all those kind of stuff. And you can get those different flavors all by just assigning out different chunks, but the mechanics are the same. Okay, let's zoom back out for a second. All right. Now, I got a couple more. So let's dive into a little bit different, and we'll focus in on perhaps something that we may not see all the time, which is a boat. Again, the nice thing is with this concept is the principle and the how you implement these chunks is the same. So regardless of doing a boat or a jet or a power suit or a wagon, it's all the same. So all I'm doing is repeating myself, but thinking about the vehicle or the object itself. Christopher, yes, absolutely. It's just a suggestion that power suits, something smaller, have 5, but you can definitely have something as large as a huge Gundam, and they have 10 hit points. Again, the piece of advice that I would still stick to is 5 chunks, just to really hone in. But there's nothing wrong with doing any kind of 10, 5, anything like that, or having more than 5 chunks or anything. Like if you're talking a huge freighter ship, a command ship, or whatever in space, like sure, you could justify having 20 chunks on that sucker. But again, ICRPG's focus is on really the essentials, the core functionality, the really the most important bits. And so once you get past 5, you start diluting what is the most important. And so that's where I stand as well. So again, the options are there, and the system allows for it, but it's just something to keep in mind. Starship. Yes. So yeah, so anyway, so we got a boat. So we're talking an old craft. This looks, blood and snow. We got our Vikings-esque things. So again, we're thinking about the most important bits. So we've got sails, we've got our mast, we've got our rudder, we've got the hull of the ship, and maybe we've got, let's gotta think, maybe if we're just thinking pirate, let's think pirates for a second. I know this is not a pirate ship, but maybe there is some kind of cannon there. Okay, so just to say it. So we've got the hull, which is up here. We've got the mast, which is one. We've got the sails, which is one. We've got the rudder, which is one, and we've got the cannons. Could do battery ram, absolutely. Or you could say, let's focus in on that opportunity. Okay, the hull could be considered a battery ram. So we're gonna, because this is a boat, I'm gonna say each one has 10 hit points instead. And so we're gonna do two things. One, the hull has, let's say, 30 slots of inventory. Okay, you can have 30 things in here. Not that that really matters or anything like that, but let's go with that. Okay, let's bring that up as well in a second. So keep that up. We're going to pin that crew concept for just a second. So the hull is there, and then you have a special ability that you can include, which is battering ram, which you can kind of branch out to here, and it says, you can, it's a weapon, and you can just damage it, but half damage dealt it goes back to the ship. And I'm not saying this is required, but this is what my head goes at. Okay, I didn't include a specific battering ram in the ship, but say somebody wants to use the battering ram, well, let's think about the hull. You can use it as a battering ram, but any half the damage that you deal goes back to the hull, right? So now if I deal 6 damage to the other ship, 3 of it is also going to be, 3 points is going to go back and hurt the hull as well. If once the hull is broken, ship starts sinking. Okay. Now let's think about the mast for a second. So the mast is what allows the sails. Now here's a question: is there a big enough difference between the mast and the sails to justify 2 different chunks? Question to be answered. Or does the mast, which is, so let's say we have the 10 thing, the mast is what allows us to go at all. So we can say having the mast really is just kind of like holds the sails. Holds the sails, and then maybe instead of that, because it's there, I can say it has 15 hit points, make it a little chunkier, and the sails only have 5, but it allows us to move, double far. So this mast holds the sails, but it has a little extra chunk to it, or the sails has only 5 hit points and can move double far. If you take down the sails, they can't move as far. Take out the mast, there. These can be, this is repairable, so you can go up and stitch it or do whatever. But this is in the heat of the battle. No, if you take out the mast, like, you completely ruin the concept of moving with this ship. But sails is just a temporary kind of hindrance. Totally possible way. There are other ways that you could totally handle the mast, the sails, things like that, and go from here. So let's go, like, the rudder is definitely a key portion, but maybe it's not something that maybe yeah, you could add a second sail for faster and go for that. And that plays into that interconnected. Like if you have two sails, you can move really far. If you don't have, if you lose one but you still have the other, you can do things. Absolutely. So let's talk about rudder. So it's a key element, but is it something that I want to focus on in the game? Maybe I don't want to focus on the rudder. Maybe, like it was mentioned, this is the crew. Okay, so you have your players, but you also have the crew. We have 10 hit points. If the crew is around 10 hit points, you can say directs, steers, controls the ship so players don't have to. So PCs don't. Okay, with this idea, if you have the crew and it has 10 chunk hit points, all of a sudden, and I say the crew is there, while the crew is around, the players don't have to be at their stations. They don't have to be manning the sails or the cannon or the rudder or the steering wheel or whatever. But as soon as the crew is gone, now the players have to man all those things. Like you have to have somebody at the rudder or at the sails manning those to really be effective. And so you can do something like that. And then you have cannons, which is a classic 10, and then you can do double weapon, far, things like that. Spend turn for easy. Okay. Now, one thing that I'll say as well is we got our cannons. So what happens if the cannons go? Well, most likely you can also say if the cannons go, you can say they explode for 2 double ultimate, essentially. If you want to say really bad, double ultimate, or you can just say ultimate, all near. Okay? Plus whole. Again, I'm making this way more complicated than I necessarily have to. So when the cannons go, explode for double ultimate, all near, and then the whole takes half of that damage. Again, a little bit more complicated, totally not necessary, but like I'm showing, and I'm as we're practicing, this is the kind of stuff that you can do with chunks, and it's wonderful. I love it. All right, let's dive into our last one, which is monsters. We've already done it once before on the last stream where we kind of talked about building and designing monsters. And so let's talk about how you can chunk out a monster more specifically. And so I wanted to take a monster that most of us, or like we're all pretty familiar with, I'd hope, which is Gargantua, which is from the Last Flight of the Red Sword, which if you have never played that one, I highly recommend you play that adventure. It's kind of like a, I don't know, it's just kind of like the entryway into some of the best, ICRPG adventures. It's just kind of, it's legendary, I'll say that. Yes, you could. Absolutely. You could have the chunks there. But that's kind of what the chunks are, is they're taking a vehicle or something and breaking up into multiple pieces in there. But like you said, it could be a battleship style game, and if that's the way you want to roll, do it. So we got Gargantua, and Gargantua actually has a lot of elements that play really nicely into chunks. Hold on, let me grab my second edition book so I can pull it out. So if you look at Gargantua, if you read through the rules here for Gargantua, however you want to say it. Sorry gotta figure out the zoom, the focus. Okay. So we've got Reptoid Gargantua for 4 hearts, 3 stats, whatever. And we're not going to worry necessarily about the stats at the moment, but we'll focus on the chunks. So you've got energy cannon, which it's a massive weapon. It does magical. You have the lash, the barbed tentacle attack from the creepy machete tail, or I guess with his arm. So you got this arm with the lash. You've got the machete tail as well. You've also got the scream. You've got an unstable cannon, and this is kind of where you clue into chunks. When 3 hearts have been destroyed, the energy cannon is torn off, and so then it becomes something that the players can use. The lair lurker, it can regenerate 5 hit points, poor senses, massive momentum. Okay, so you've got some elements of chunks already built into this monster, but if you really want to dive into the chunks, yeah, no problem, Richard. See you later. It's just going to be up just right after this, so feel free to come back in and catch what you missed. So I need to practice my ums. You can dive into a monster and take care of those extra elements and include those extra mechanics per chunk, rather than having just the classic monster, which is still great, but this can add a little bit more of that variety. So we've got the energy cannon, we've got the lashing arm, you've got the machete tail, we've got a core feature here, and we've got the screaming head. So let's start with the easy ones, and we'll do the energy cannon. So that one's going to have, so rather than saying 5, we'll stick with 10. So we can do this. So specs is, energy beam, all in straight line. When it's destroyed, broken off with 1 shot left. Okay. Now, one of the things that you might see is, even though some of the mechanics are essentially the same as what was written in the core adventure, what chunks can maybe allow you to do now is have a really clearing system of, I really want to clear out that gun, and I really want to emphasize that players can focus in on taking out that gun, shooting the gun's arm off, doing whatever, slashing at it. And so now you have a reason to go, okay, it's a hard shot. And then, yeah, if it's broken, it can explode, or you can say it falls off and it can give the players a treat with the 1 shot left. All different sorts of options. So then we've got the machete tail, which has 10 HP. It does weapon up to far. We've got the other arm, and maybe this time, hard shot to the target for any kind of aimed things there. Maybe instead of focusing in on this arm here, maybe I want to have something about the core. So maybe he's got his core functionality, and what I want to do is do the we'll do, say, like blood arc reactor. I don't know what that is, but blood arc reactor. So this one actually has 20 HP because it's real tough and is behind Duranium. So we got Duranium, shell, and then you can say that the blood arc reactor, as he consumes blood, heal, energy, explodes when destroyed. So if you take out the blood arc reactor, then it's tougher because it's Duranium and it's got 20 HP. And then, but when the ability is consume blood, you heal energy, but it explodes when destroyed. So if you take out that one, then the whole gargantua just blows up, you could say, and say that's a key pin piece, but it's now tougher. And so if you're focusing your attention here, then you're leaving the weapons and other things out out to fight and contend with. So then we've got our Reptoid Skull. So that's 10 HP. Again, maybe the Reptoid Skull, you know, maybe if I destroy this, he's not like dead. So that's one thing that to keep in mind is narratively, you don't have to limit yourself to say, okay, this Reptide Skull has 10 hit points. When he has 10 hit points, his head is blown off. Like, you don't have to say that. What you can say is, when he loses the 10 hit points, the Sonic Scream ability is a no-go, right? So as soon as the Sonic Scream is taken care of, he still has his head, he still can fight, and he doesn't just die automatically. Or he could, you totally can do that, but you lose the ability, and that's the power of those chunks. And then let's do with that, we'll go something mobility this time. So jump jets in the back, so 10 hit points. Blast through walls up to far, up to double far, say, let's do that. Up to double far, anybody caught, so dex save, or I guess we'll say defense. So dex or defense save to prevent double ultimate. Oh, sorry, I'm writing down here. So let's see. You're saying, so really you can let your imagination run wild with these things. You can build whatever you want. Yeah. Essentially, yeah. ICRPG says, go for it. Do what you want to do. Use this tool set to make what you envision in a simple, focused way. Yeah, definitely. Sounds like it's good to spread out kill effects. Yeah, you can do all sorts of things. Does anyone use guidelines to determine size for these things? Well, I think there's not hard, fast guidelines, but I definitely think that let's look at a couple examples of other examples that we've done. But yeah, so that was our monster, and so you can see how you can do that in your monster. But let's look at a couple examples. So this is from Master Edition. And again, different ways you can handle it. Vehicle examples. 3 categories: slow, fast, hyperspeed. And this is talking a lot about like actual vehicles. Slow and fast engines use 1 chunk. Hyperfast uses 2 chunk, like hypercars, blower. So a grav bike, 2 chunks, engines fast, fairing, ram for weapon damage. So 2 chunks could be much smaller. Hypercars, 4 chunks, engine, roll cage, chain gun, nitro blower, might be a little bit bigger. Dredge, engine, haul crane, grenade launcher, ram, flatbed, carry another vehicle, or battle suit, 5 chunks. And so it's not necessarily a set guidelines, but yeah, if smaller vehicles could very well have fewer chunks. They don't have to have 4. They don't have to have 5. You could have a 1 chunk vehicle. It's all about really highlighting what is the key elements that you want to focus on for this thing, and how much complexity do you want to involve. Like the wagon example. Okay. If I don't care enough to make, if there's really not an emphasis on this wagon during the game, there's not really a reason for me to flesh this out with 5 chunks. I might say this is just the only important piece of the wagon in the encounter is the wheels. That's all I care about. So it's a 1 chunk wagon, wheels is all that matters. Yep, smart car is 1 chunk. So building out from there, you can just kind of they back up here in the guidelines as well. It kind of gives the functionality, the idea that's like, okay, 1 chunk is a key function or weapon, 250 pounds of metal. So you think about a starship, that's a lot of metal. So it's going to have more chunks, but nothing, no set kind of guidelines for that kind of stuff. And yeah, so that is chunks. And so it's a great tool. It's really simple. It's one of those beautiful ideas that it's 2 pages, and even that it's really 1 page that's really playing around to it. So it's a simplified system of taking vehicles into your game, suits, all sorts of things, and like we saw, boats, monsters, wagons, all those different tool sets and different ideas, and including them in your game in a very simple way. So throw in a boat, throw in a wagon, throw in a power suit, throw in a giant reptoid like death machine, and you can include it without the complexity and the nitty-grittiness that could come from adding and trying to simulate every little aspect of it. So let's see, if you want a bike with more chunks than 2, you could give it 5 HP points. Absolutely. If you're like, this is a small thing, I want to have small chunks. If you want to include the bell on your bike as a chunk, that's a key function that you want to focus in on, you could totally say it's a 5 HP chunk, or you could even say it's a 1 HP chunk. Again, like I said, it's a guideline, not hard, fast rules. And once you start playing with it, then you can see how you might include a lot of these stuff. Oh, nice. Congrats, Chris, running your 4th session today. That's sweet. I'm running a little session tomorrow, and I'm super excited for it. So I've actually, hopefully, I think I've seen a couple people, but I won't say this long. I've actually been using a lot of my sheets that I've been having up on the last couple streams, and I've actually flushed out a little fight encounter for tomorrow. And so I've got some monsters built out. I've got my level of disruptions built out. I've got some roll tables, as well as kind of like the encounter itself built out. And one thing that I haven't filled this out quite yet, but on the forums, somebody actually did a sheet with the monster set, so you can grab that on the forums. But yeah, I've been setting up, so I'm super excited and highly recommend it. Just grab it. Just grab your notebook. Try building out sheets this week. With some chunks. Build out a couple things. Build out a wagon. Build out a ship. Build out a jet. It doesn't matter. Just try building out. It's a lot of things. Build out items. Build out key points in your encounter with chunks. Like the endless opportunities are there. So just practice this week with that. But yeah, thank you guys for tuning in this morning. It's been a lot of fun, and it gets me some good practice, these morning sessions. And so hope you guys all have some fun games this plan this weekend, and we'll talk to you next time. Hold on really quick. Last one, Jonathan posted with the last comment. So I post somewhere, do you think something like this could work for this guy monster? 1 chunk is a swarm of insects. As you hit the swarm, you reduce HP 1 by 1. Makes sense. Yeah, absolutely. Make a swarm a chunk. If you have caught me at the very end after I said bye. So this is the PS message. There is a swarm monster in Master Edition right here on page 141. This is only one way to do it, but you could use it for some inspiration. But I totally think you could do a swarm with chunks, 100%. Oh, you're good, Jonathan. Like, I'm happy to do a little PS after the thing. But yeah, totally try it out. That's a great thing to practice this week. Just so grab a just notepad and work out what things to focus on for your swarm. But it totally works. Again, thank you guys. I'll catch you later.